So this is the second and final curriculum objective for this first mini unit. All right, solving equations with fractions. All right, a couple of things to remember. All right, everyone's watched the video by this point, but just quick reminders. All right, make sure you're taking notes as you watch the videos because it's going to help with your recall. All right, remember you can pause the video or even rewind the video at any point. All right, it's great for helping you take notes or kind of rehear something that I said. And the last thing is, remember, on those problems that ask you to try yourself, actually make sure you try the problems. It's a really quick way for you to gauge, do I understand what's going on, or do I need to get help sooner rather than later? Because if your answers match up on those examples, you're doing great. If they don't, you might be able to figure it out, or maybe not, and that's where you can ask for help. All right, so there's just a couple quick reminders. I won't do this throughout the whole year, all right, maybe every once in a while, all right, but just for our first unit to remind you of what you should be doing. All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about solving equations with fractions. All right, this one's actually interesting because the solving equations part will actually be a foundational objective in our first real unit. All right, so it's kind of two birds with one stone. This will prepare you for the next unit and help you get through this unit. All right, so first of all, what do we mean when we're talking about solving equations? All right, when we're solving an equation, all right, the one thing we're going to do is we want to isolate our variable. It can change from x to a to whatever. All right, I'm going to use x for the most part because that's like the typical algebra thing. All right, it's kind of easy to not get confused with other letters. All right, but we want to isolate. I get the x all by itself on one side of the equal sign. All right, we're going to do this by slowly removing the other terms piece by piece. So we just want to keep getting rid of terms until we have just the x. All right, so what's this going to look like in practice? If we're going to solve 3x minus 1 equals 26. All right, and again, our goal is to take this x and get it all by itself. Right now, there's kind of two things that are keeping it being by itself. There's the 3 and the 1. All right, there's almost the reverse of the order of operations. We're going to get rid of the things away from x first and then kind of slowly work our way into x. So if we're going to get rid of 3 or 1 first, the 1's farther away from the x, so I'm going to get rid of the 1 first. And we do the opposite to both sides of the equation. So plus 1 and minus 1, those cancel out. We're leaving with just 3x on this side. 26 plus 1 is 27. And now I still have that 3, and that x3 is being multiplied by x, or the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And x equals 27 divided by 3 is 9. All right, so that is our final answer. All right, one way you can check, and we'll talk about this more later, you can check your answer by taking it, plug in for x, and just make sure the answer or the equation actually makes sense. All right, in this case, x equals 9. All right, so that kind of solving right there is going to be a foundational objective in the next unit. But for this unit, all right, we're talking about fractions. All right, so how can we solve this equation with fractions? Well, you could just solve the exact same way, add 1/3 to both sides. Simplify from there and everything, you'll have the x by itself. But the trick I kind of want to teach you in this video is we can really quickly change equations that have fractions into ones that don't. And the way we can do that is, let's say we have this 1/3 right here. And how can I get rid of a fraction? Well, we said before, we take a number divided by itself, that's kind of 1, and the fraction goes away. So what I want to do is put a 3 up here. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to multiply the whole left-hand side of the equation by 3. And and it's an equation, so if I do the left-hand side, I also have to do the right-hand side. Okay. All right, one thing you have to do is multiply everything by 3. So the first thing is going to be 3x. And then 3 times 1/3, I'm actually going to write it out. 3 is 3 over 1. That becomes 3 over 3. Let me write it in black. The right-hand one, again, 3 is 3 over 1, so it's going to be 15 over 2. And the whole reason we did this is because this fraction in the middle just turns into 1. So now we took an equation that has 2 fractions, now it only has 1 fraction. Now we can get rid of that 1 fraction doing the same thing. We're going to take everything and multiply it by 2. Remember that 2 is just 2 over 1, so this is going to give me 6x minus 2 equals 15 times 2 is 30, divided by 2 is 15 right, so basically what's happening is these 2's are canceling out, and I just get that 15. And now it has no fractions, so now it's just like the last problem. I can add 2 to both sides. Then divide by 6. And x equals 17 over 6. That's our final answer. You can't simplify 17 over 6 at all. There's no common factors, so we just leave it like that. All right, so in this particular example, it might have been easier just to add the fraction at the beginning, simplify the fraction, and be done. All right, but this is just kind of the trick that's going to help you as the equations get more complex or the fractions are in different places. All right, kind of just multiplying by the bottom of the fraction. So in this case, we multiplied this 3 over there, this 2 over there. And you can get rid of all the fractions, and then the equation becomes a bit simpler to work with because there's no more fractions. All right, you can still get a fraction as your final answer, but as you're working through the steps, there's no fractions. All right, so this one is your turn. All right, so go ahead and try this one. All right, there's only one fraction. Get rid of that fraction first, then solve it and figure out what your final answer is. So here's how I solve the problem. Yeah, not the only way to solve. As soon as you're working with equations, there's an infinite way you can solve it. But the kind of way I'd expect based on the way we did the last one, multiply both sides by 5. On the right-hand side, we do that because those 5's cancel out, and we just get the 4. On the right-hand side, we need to make sure we multiply both things by 5. So 5 times x is 5x, 3 times 5 is 15. Subtract 15, divide by 5, and we get our final answer down there. Again, as long as you've isolated the x, that means you've solved for x. All right, this one just has more fractions, but again, we just go piece by piece and get rid of every fraction as we go along. So I can do multiply everything by 3 first. And those 3's are going to cancel. 3 times 1/4 is 3/4. Again, that's 3 over 1. And 9 over 5. All right, so I got rid of one fraction. Do it again. Multiply everything by 4. 4x plus 3. 9 times 4 is 36. And last step, get rid of that last fraction, multiply everything by 5. 20x plus 15 equals 36. Because those 5's cancel over there. And now, no fractions. Now it's like all the other examples we did, particularly the very first one. Subtract 15. 36 minus 15 is going to be 21. Divide by 20. We get 21 over 20. All right, so really similar to all the other ones, there's just one extra fraction, so we've got to multiply step by step. All right, one thing you could have done at the start here it's almost like you're kind of finding a common denominator, figure out what number will cancel all these fractions out at the same time. In this case, it would be 60. Yep, 60. So if I multiply all these numbers by 60, 60 divided by 3 is 20. 60 divided by 4 is 15. 60 divided by 5 is 12. 12 times 3 is 36. All right, so you can actually do this in one step. The numbers are just going to be a bit bigger, and there's a bit more simplifying in terms of the fractions themselves. All right, but it's up to you whether you want to do it all in one step or kind of break down every single fraction. I tend to just do one fraction at a time because I make less mistakes that way. All right, but it's up to you how you want to simplify down to there's no fractions, and then you solve it like before. All right, so here's one for you to solve, one less fraction than the previous example. All right, but you can get rid of these fractions at the same time or in 2 different steps. All right, so go ahead and solve this problem. All right, so here's kind of 2 different ways that you could solve this one. So if we want to get rid of the fractions one at a time, multiply by 5 first, then 2. All right, and just again, make sure you're multiplying everything by that number, not just the fraction. I get 4x minus 10 equals 5. The other thing you do is just multiply both sides at 10 right away, and 10 is just 5 times 2. So just going to get rid of both those fractions at the same time. And again, that simplifies once you simplify all the fractions into 4x minus 10 equals 5. So again, that line's the same, just two different ways of getting there. And we get down to our final answer, 15 over 4. All right, and to finish this video, multiple choice question, try to solve this one. Again, be careful, the answers are shuffled. I can't make it not shuffle it, which is kind of annoying. All right, but just make sure you're clicking the one you actually think is the right answer. All right, and then this is the video. You took your notes. Next is to do some practice. To make sure you understand it, and you can do it in multiple contexts. And then it's time for the skill check. All right, so you've made it this far. You're almost done the main part of the unit, and then you can move on to the projects and stuff after you get through that skill check.